الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده حمدا كثيرا والصلاة والسلام على الحبيب المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear brothers and sisters, today inshallah we will continue with part 5 of my reflections on Surah Al-Fatiha. We covered in the first 4 episodes all the way from A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We also covered Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. And in the last episode we spoke about Al-Fatiha as our prayers. Today inshallah we will continue with the next verse, which is the verse that says مالك يوم الدين. Verse number 3. مالك يوم الدين. Malik is the possessor, the owner of. Yawm al-Din, the day of Deen, the day of judgment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to say, when we are praying for Him, to acknowledge, to affirm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the possessor, is the controller of the day of judgment. The word Malik can be recited in 2 different ways. We can either say Maliki Yawmiddin or we can say Maliki Yawmiddin. So what's the difference between those 2 words? The word Malik means the possessor of, the one who is in control of what is under his domain. Malik means king. And the difference between the Malik and the Malik is that the Malik has only control over what is under his domain. The king has control over what is under his domain and everybody else's. We say, as the scholar says, on the day of judgment, there is no Malik and there is no Malik, there is no possessor and there is no king except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the concept of the day of judgment is an incredibly important concept, because this concept establishes balance in this life. Because without the existence of the day of judgment, there will be no balance. Because those who will harm and hurt people, there is nothing to recompense those that they have hurt. If people do not believe genuinely that there is an accounting for what they are doing, the net result of that is going to be chaos. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this world work, make this world inhabitable by establishing balance amongst humans, because we know the day of judgment exists. The second thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala establishing the day of judgment is part of His mercy, is the ultimate mercy. With the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala establishes mercy on earth. Because as we said earlier, without the control of the day of judgment, people will go about their business of harming each other without any thing to hold them back. The next thing we're going to look at is the concept of kingdom and kings. People will turn around and say, but there are kings in this life. Yes, there are kings in this life. There are kings of countries in this life. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that it is He who permits some humans to become kings. It is He who puts them in place, and it is He who yanks them out of it. Listen to this beautiful verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 258. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر إلى الذي حاج إبراهيم في ربه أن أتاه الله الملك إذ قال إبراهيم رب الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهت الذي كفر والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. In this beautiful verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us the story of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was talking to Nimrod, the king in Abyssinia, and not the king in Abyssinia, the king in Mesopotamia. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us at the beginning, He says, have you not seen to the one who was arguing with Ibrahim regarding Ibrahim's Lord? Because I have given him his kingdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنْ أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I gave him that kingdom. I have allowed him to become king. And then the story continues and says, where Ibrahim says to this king, he says, God gives life and takes away life. And the arrogant king says, I give life and I take away life. He brought 2 prisoners sentenced to death. He let one of them go and he executed the other. So Ibrahim alayhi salam turns around and he says, Allah brings the sun from the east. You bring it from the west. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. The one who has denied was stunned. He was absolutely stunned, silenced by that argument. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And Allah is not going to guide those who are oppressors, those who are those who do not provide justice, the unjust. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives kingdom and kingship, and it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who takes it away. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what we already know, and that is, once a king sits in his position, he does not want to leave it. Very few in our human history, a king has ever abdicated his kingdom. They are usually yanked away from it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this in this beautiful, beautiful verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Ali Imran in verse 26, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزَعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, O God, the King of Kings, the King of all dominions, you give kingdom to whom you will and you yank it away, you pull it away. Tanza. And naza' is not removal, and naza' is extraction. وَتَنْزَعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ, and you extract it from whom you wish. وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ, and you give dignity to whomever you want, and you take away dignity from whomever you want. بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرِ, in your hand is all the goodness. إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ, you are capable over everything. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that worldly kingdoms is nothing more than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away. And the Day of Judgment is there for one main reason. The main reason for the existence of the Day of Judgment, it is the day in which we are going to be given the result of the test that we went through in this life. So this life is nothing more than a test for the permanent life. Now I can hear the argument, I have heard the argument many times before, when people say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. So what's the purpose of testing us if He knows the result of our actions? Well, this is a big theological discussion in which we will talk about one day, inshallah. But we will answer that specific question. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not test because He does not know the result. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests because He is fair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests so no one will have an excuse. I have worked, and inshallah will continue to work in the future, as a professor of predominantly Arabic language, but other Islamic fields as well in universities. By the end of the semester, I know what each student is capable of. I can tell you before the final exam what each student is going to get. I can actually write down their marks for them without them taking a test. But what will happen if I did that? If I did that, I will be accused of not being fair. Because the one who will be given a bad grade will turn around and says, if I only took the test, I would have proven to you that I've learned the materials. So why does a professor give the test? He gives the test to be fair. to take away the excuse of those who failed their learning, failed in doing what was required of them, take away their excuses. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us, not because He needs to know what we're going to do, but He tests us so we can prove to ourselves, so He can prove to us that we either have succeeded or that we have failed in the things that we were asked to do by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next part is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the day of judgment. So the word day to some people means a 24-hour period, or it means from sunset to sunset, or from sunrise to sunrise. That's their definition of a day. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines the day in different ways. Very important point, a very important theological point. Time, which a day is, time is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Time does not exist outside of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Big Bang Theory says that time and space were created together at the moment of the Big Bang. Muslim scholars have been saying for centuries that time started with the creation of the heavens and the earth. Time is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He controls it, and it does not control Him. And we will spend quite a bit of reflection on that point in the future, inshallah. But the day of judgment is not a 24-hour period. Listen to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in these next two verses. The first one comes from Surah Al-Hajj, verse 47. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالْعَذَابِ وَلَنْ يَخْلِفَ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ إِنَّ يَوْمًا عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ كَأَلْفِ سَنَةٍ مِّمَّا تَعُدُّونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they are hurrying you up for that punishment that you're promising them. Says, yeah, when is this punishment? Bring it on, bring it on. وَلَنْ يَخْلُفَ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. Allah is not going to break His promise. And then He tells us, He says, وَإِنَّ يَوْمًا, and a day, as far as your Lord is concerned, is equivalent to 1,000 years of what you count. So here in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines a day of His as 1,000 years of what we count. Then you say, well, maybe the day of judgment is 1,000 years old. Well, not quite. Why? Listen to the next verse that comes from Surah Al-Ma'arij, verse number 4. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, تعرج الملائكة والروح إليه في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة. He says, on that day, the angels will descend to Him in a day in which its length is 50,000 years. So here's another day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, and that day is how long? It's 50,000 days of what we count. So how long is the day of judgment? Well, it suffices to say, so far, it is longer than the entire humanity has been on earth to date. Okay? So, we do not know how long the day of judgment is. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us that for those of us who have done the right thing, the day will be easy, the day will be short, the day will be pleasant. And for those of us, God forbid, who have failed this test, the day is nasty, the day is long, and we are going to be afraid, and we are going to be sad. The final point I want to talk to you about is the theological importance of the Day of Judgment. It is a pillar of our theology that we believe in the Day of Judgment. And that's what makes us different from other religions that believe in the one God. But what makes us different than them is they do not believe in the Day of Judgment, and we do. And we have already explained the importance of the Day of Judgment on our behavior. But on our theology, on our aqidah, on what we believe in, our belief that the Day of Judgment exists is a pillar of who we are. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to have taqwa, wanted us to have that As Fazlur Rahman describes it in his beautiful book, Major Themes of the Qur'an, which I have referred to multiple times. He defines taqwa in a beautiful definition. Some people translate taqwa badly as God-fearing or God consciousness or God protection from God and all kinds of descriptions. The definition that Fazlur Rahman comes with is a beautiful one. And what Fazlur Rahman says is taqwa is that torch in our hearts, the torch in our souls that lights for us the path, so we can tell the good from the bad. And that taqwa is what is required of us to make it into the afterlife, to be successful in the afterlife. And the taqwa is predicated on the fact that we believe that we are going to be judged on the Day of Judgment. So our belief in the Day of Judgment is a part and parcel. It's a pillar of what a Muslim believes in. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Fatiha, after we have thanked Him, after we have called Him with His beautiful names, we acknowledge that He is the controller, the king, the only sovereign on that day in which humanity will be judged. And that, my brothers and sisters, will bring us to the end of this verse. Inshallah, in part 6, we will talk about the following verse after that, which is coming up, inshallah, in the next few days. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. My dear brothers, if you find these episodes of value, please subscribe to this channel and freely share these videos, these episodes with your brothers and sisters. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.